Hello, class. It's your professor Frank Henry Allah, and this is a continuation of the lecture Neighborhood and Built Environment. And so, how does asbestos impact health? So, asbestos is a mineral fiber, so literally like fibers, and it occurs in rocks and soils, and it's really strong. These are really strong fibers and also heat resistant. So what does that mean? Really good for constructing buildings, really good to make sure an area is not going to get burned down if it catches on fire if we put asbestos. And so it's in a lot of building materials, roofing, ceilings, attics, and so forth. It's also in the car too, mainly because its property being so strong and heat resistant. Common places, it's in the attic, it's in walls, oil and coal furnaces, heat resistant fabrics, and so forth. And the exposure to asbestos increase your risk of developing lung disease. So the effect of long-term exposure to asbestos typically don't show up for 10 to 40 years after initial exposure. The fibers does cause scarring of the lungs. Remember, those fibers are literally cutting the lungs. And it leads to asbestos or asbestosis. And then mesothelioma cancer also is caused by asbestos. Asbestos, the signs is shortness of breath, persistent dry cough, chest tightness, dry and crackling sounds in your lungs, and also fingertips and toes. Most at risk are houses built before the 1970s, so asbestos was widely used. Literally, it was required in schools between 1940 and 1973. So imagine how many schools were built during those times that had asbestos. Workers, so like asbestos miners, aircraft, boiler operators, railroad workers, electricians, and so forth, or even those whose job is to remove asbestos, um, are at risk of getting um, exposed to asbestos. So how do we reduce the exposure? Is to wear personal protective gear, avoid disturbing the material that might contain asbestos. So a lot of the times, like with any of these things, if it's not disturbed, right? If there's nothing, if you're not messing with it, not moving it around, then it's contained. But the minute you start going in and shaking it up, poking holes, like start breaking your walls or start breaking the ceiling and stuff, what you're doing is you're exposing to asbestos, so that's really dangerous. In low levels, and a lot of times it's in low levels in the home. So in order to clean it, use wet mops. And actually the health department, some health departments, local health departments actually rent out HEPA vacuums, so high efficiency particulate air vacuums that are able to suck up all the particles. It's recommended, instead of sweeping like you're outside and things like that, to actually spray down with water instead. So you want to stop it from going up and floating around the air. Like when you sweep dust, it floats. You want to stop that. Also too, it's important to make sure that you keep windows closed when there's a lot of wind, because if there's cracks or something in your home, the wind comes in and could potentially start disrupting or shaking around the asbestos. um how was this first recognized? So this was first recognized through the workers at this Manville Corporation. They actually ended up going bankrupt with a lawsuit because they were the largest asbestos company, and many of their workers and so forth were actually getting sick from all these lung issues. And the problem is that it doesn't show up right away. It's literally down the line that shows up, so later in life. So that's the concern with it. The World Trade Center, when that came crumbling down, a lot of workers like fire departments, first responders, the cleanup crew, they were exposed to asbestos and things because that was a pretty old building. And like I said, you don't see these effects until later in life. And that's it for this lecture, this part lecture.